Today's topic might be a little controversial again. I like that. I think it's very important to think of these topics because these might be the things that are blocking you right at the root. And you might be thinking of fixing your Norwegian in terms of more courses, more effort, more grammar, more whatever, and it's not working. And that's usually because there is something else going on. So I'm very excited about this topic of motivation because I meet it very, very, very often with my students or with people who talk to me because they are considering becoming students or they just have a question, they want a consultation, and they ask me about this thing called motivation. People would often tell me that, Anishka, I feel like I'm lacking the motivation to be learning Norwegian. And sometimes, often, it seems like they feel ashamed. Yeah, like people feel ashamed that they are lacking motivation. It feels like it was a sin. And I always say it's not like a sin, it's a sign, right? It's a slight difference to the spelling, but a big difference for how you structure your thinking around this. Because what we have learned at school, what it looks like in Norwegian courses, it's like, okay, the motivated students, those are the ones that are going to progress. Those are the ones that are going to use the course up. Those are the ones who kind of do it right. Okay. So there is this perception that the good student is the motivated student. And obviously, for a teacher, it's hard to work with somebody who is not internally motivated. That's why it's hard to work with kids at school because very often they don't care about the thing that the teachers are trying to teach them. And a lot of pedagogy actually is built around trying to manipulate people or children, but children are people as well, right? It's all the same for kids and for us adults, trying to manipulate people into learning something that they didn't want to be learning in the first place, right? So, like, motivating somebody often in pedagogy means like you try and gamify the thing so that people don't notice that they didn't care in the first place about the subject matter, right? Or things like that. There are a lot of tips and tricks in pedagogy for engaging people or motivating people. But hey, you know what? If you were interested in the thing, like genuinely interested in the first place, you don't need any animation around it, do you? Right? You just do the thing because you want to, and that's your motivation. I really want to talk about it because, like I'm saying, not feeling motivated is a sign of something. It doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with you or that you are a bad student or any of these contents that we put on it, any of these labels we assign it. So that's the main thing I want to start with. Yeah, lacking the motivation, you noticing that you're lacking it is a good to know. It's valuable for you to realize that and to notice it because then you can work with it. But it's not like there is anything wrong or like you're doing anything wrong, right? There is a big difference. I want to define motivation as well. I've done a little bit of it already by speaking about the kids. Like, when they are genuinely interested in learning something, they do not need any kind of switching activities quickly so that they don't notice it, or gamifying, or whatever external motivation, or like punishments or treats or whatever it might be. When they want to learn like the whole list of all Pokemons that exist, they will just learn it, and they will learn it in days or short weeks, and they will just sit down and learn it because they are so interested, right? No gamification needed, really. But you need to be assessing this thing as valuable. So I'm getting into the definition I want to give you here. And this is a definition I got from a book that's called Life-Changing Conversations by the psychologist Jon Connelly, rather a therapist. I'm not sure if he's a psychologist or not. He is the founder of a method called rapid resolution therapy, which is not to do with learning languages. It's a general therapy kind of stream. It's very interesting because what he does is he basically talks people out of stuff by showing them radically different perspectives on certain things. He talks about motivation in many of the dialogues that he published in this book. And what he says, a definition that really resonates with me, is that whenever something is perceived as valuable, right, or as useful or as good for you in the long run, perceived by you, and at the same time, whenever this something feels possible for you, then motivation will occur. And I was like, I need to share this with my audience because this is very, very important to realize. I have so many students who struggle emotionally. They feel shame around not being motivated because the good student is motivated, right? Because the successful student is motivated. So I should get myself motivated so that I can learn Norwegian. Well, obviously, it does help a huge deal to be motivated. It's really hard to be learning anything that you're not motivated to be learning. That is true. But it does not make sense that you are able or that you should make yourself or get yourself to be motivated. Like, how are you supposed to do that if you are just trying to generate the motivation out of thin air? It's not possible. You cannot generate motivation out of nowhere, right? Motivation occurs naturally, as Jon Connelly says, when you put together the value that you are perceiving in the future for yourself based on your own feelings and judgments. Not that somebody tells you that is good, but you feel this will be good for you in the long run. And at the same time, you see the possibility. It feels possible. And I would like to break this down because I think that this is where the problem lies with very many of my students in the initial phase. This is what we work with, right? In the coaching part of our cooperation. This is also something people ask a lot about in courses, and they're like, how should I find the motivation? Motivation is not to be found on the street, or it doesn't grow on trees, or like it's not in the shop, right? So you are not going to find motivation ever. Motivation will occur in you when you perceive the value plus you see the possibility. And I want to have a look at this because obviously, as I was saying, having the motivation, while maybe not necessary to learn the language, it certainly helps a huge deal if you are motivated genuinely, right? Not by an exam. Even like external motivation can help you in the short run, but it's going to make you miserable if it's your only source of motivation, this kind of external kind, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about true internal motivation, you wanting it. But it's really, really useful to have it. It's going to help you. It's going to save you time and energy, and the learning process is going to stop being an emotional drain for you, right? Because if it makes you feel bad, then it's a sign as well that you are lacking inner motivation. You don't actually want to be doing that. That's why it makes you feel miserable, right? So it is desirable in a way to have that motivation, but you cannot generate it out of thin air. It's impossible. And definitely you should not be blaming it on yourself that you don't have it. It might be a completely logical thing in your situation. So let's have a look at the two components that I took from Connelly's thoughts. And let's have a look at what it might be in each of them, because if you want to get motivated in a way, or if you want to perceive or feel motivated, then the places to be fixing are the two components. It's not like you should just make yourself feel motivated, which is not possible, like I'm saying. Number one is the usefulness. Yeah, like Jon Connelly says, if something feels like it's a good thing for me in the future, it's a useful thing, it's a valuable thing for me, then I'll get motivated. Yeah, that's one of the components. And when I ask people, like, is it a good thing to be able to speak Norwegian when you live in Norway? People say, like, oh, of course it is, without thinking. Yeah, everybody is the same. Like, of course. Now, I know many people for whom it actually does not matter that much if they speak or do not speak Norwegian on a practical level. Yeah, they work in an international environment, right? The family doesn't speak Norwegian, right? And there is a phase of their life when it actually doesn't matter. I know many people who move to Norway as expats and then they need to spend some time on building their career, establishing themselves. Maybe they are transferring a business or starting a new business, and that's a busy period with very different priorities than learning Norwegian if you are in an international sphere. If the work language for you is English, for example, it's very natural that Norwegian would not be your priority, and then the perceived value of learning it is not so huge for you. So I know many people like that. And then maybe they have kids, and then the kids start attending the institutions, and then suddenly the Norwegian thing starts to be a little bit more pressing. And then people just, like would hit the table at a point and they will say, like, okay, now I feel that I have to learn Norwegian because I want to understand my kids when they talk to their friends. I want to be able to have their friends come over. I need to be able to understand at school. Or maybe I'm looking at the kind of promotion at work where Norwegian suddenly would be a plus. But before, for maybe 3, 4, 5 years, it wasn't, right? And so, where is the perceived value? And we feel like we should perceive it as valuable because, like, obviously, the good immigrant integrates and learns Norwegian. Well, it depends, right? If you are a high performing professional, you might be able to integrate quite well without knowing the language in the initial phase, right? So even though you feel like, oh, I should want it, I like this is useful, isn't it? Well, it's useful, of course. It would be better to just magically teleport yourself into a state of being when you know Norwegian, but the perceived value, it's not so huge, right? Like, it's an okay thing for you, but it's not such a great thing. You have greater things, like, for example, establishing your career is much more of a priority for you in that situation, and it makes sense. It makes complete sense, right? So I wouldn't call this a problem, even. I would just call this, maybe, let's say, like there is a something in this perceived value sphere. So one of the components for motivation to occur, right, is that you're perceiving this thing, being able to speak Norwegian, as good for you, as valuable, as useful. And maybe for you in that phase of life, it's just not as useful, right? And this is a tricky thing to say, like, especially for me. I'm a Norwegian coach, I'm a Norwegian teacher. I help people learn Norwegian to speak with confidence, to learn to speak with more ease, right? Also to speak at a more professional level, for example, at work. It's a stupid thing to come from me, isn't it? To tell people that, like, maybe you shouldn't be prioritizing Norwegian in this phase of your life because, like, you can't make yourself be motivated if your system is telling you, like, this thing isn't very important for us, right? So we're not doing it right now. Maybe you are right. So if you feel that you are not motivated, isn't it actually this, that you do not need it? Yeah, I know it does resonate with many people because this is not something I came up with. This is something you guys told me, a number of you already, that I know I should be learning Norwegian, but I can't make myself to learn because actually it doesn't feel like I need it that much. And people would lower their voice and they feel like, it feels like a confession, like, Father, there is something I need to tell you. I don't feel motivated to learn Norwegian. It doesn't feel that useful to me. Well, guess what? You're just right, probably. So maybe it's something like that. And this thing, if you are feeling it in this way, this thing tends to swing at a certain point, that people would pick up some Norwegian from the air, or maybe attend a little course here and there. Maybe there is some training at work, and then maybe in 3 years time, in 5 years time, when they are established, or maybe looking at some different career prospects where Norwegian suddenly is a thing, or the kids, like I was mentioning, kids come and suddenly you're like, oops, my house is full of my kids' friends and I want to understand what's going on, right? So suddenly it flips. And then you become motivated, then you become searching for a teacher, and it's all natural. So that's one thing. But now let's have a look at the second component that Jon Connelly mentions, and he says, and this is very, very important, and I have seen this many, many times with people who approach me for consultations or people who want to study Norwegian with me. They tell me, I'm not good with languages. I've always struggled with languages. I tried to learn Norwegian and I failed. These kind of things, and they feel that, I'm not good with languages. People feel that this is a fact, right? It might be supported by some evidence from the past. It depends on why these things occurred in the first place in the past. Sometimes they occurred because of the lack of motivation in the first place. But what this leads to is what Jon Connelly says: motivation will occur if you really want that thing, if you perceive it as valuable, number one. And number two, if you perceive it as possible for you, if you see the possibility for you succeeding. And this is it, right? If you come to your teacher and you're like, you're gonna have a difficult job with me because I'm not good with languages. What the hell, person, right? And obviously, this is a natural thing to say because this has been reinforced in us. Like, for example, I've never been good at maths, right? Or like physics. So, like, I have many things I've never been good at. On the other hand, I was never good at maths, but then suddenly, in the last but 1 year at high school, I realized I had to take the school leaving exam in maths because that was the least evil out of my options back then. And I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? So I started taking it seriously. I kind of somehow started believing that I could do it. I worked really hard for some months, and then it flipped. And I actually passed the exam with no problem at all. And I was even helping my classmates. But if it didn't happen, if I hadn't realized that I had to pick this, or like I could have picked something else, but I felt that the maths would be the least evil, right? And I just did it, and I even started enjoying it. Then I dropped it and I never touched it again. So I'm not so good again now, of course. But what changed in me is I now see the possibility. I know that if I focused on it, I could learn a lot. Obviously, I'm not winning the Nobel Prize for anything technical in my lifetime, mostly because I'm not interested in it either, right? But I can do pretty well. I saw it. My judgment before about me not being able to, not being the kind of person who is able and so on, that was wrong. And it might be just as wrong for your Norwegian. So many people tell me like, oh, I'm not the person, not the kind of person who can do it. Then we work together, maybe for half a year, maybe for a year. And then suddenly they become these star students. They understand everything. They have so much agency, right? And it's because of the perceived, like the change in your perception. There is nothing different about your abilities, but you focus differently and you believe that it's possible. And this also generates motivation. I have a student I'm thinking of now who joined me some time ago. And when she started with me, she was like, this is my last shot. I'm really not motivated. Like that was this motivation problem. And also a big skepsis problem based on experience from the past. And then we worked together for some time. And she saw the results. She saw that she actually was capable. And that is what sparks the motivation, right? Because she already had the perception of value. Yeah, she has a Norwegian partner and she wanted that for her private life and partially for her work life. She felt like she had the perceived value at that point. But she did not have the other component. She didn't believe it was actually possible because she had bad experience, so she was very skeptical of Norwegian teaching. She felt like, oh, I'm probably not good with languages, even though she was working in a language that was not her own, but like Norwegian is different, right? And the minute she realized and felt that, oh, this thing is actually possible for me, you see the possibility of success, then she suddenly was like, you know what? I think I should head for norskprøve to have a frame to work towards. And I'm like, yes, let's do it. But at the beginning, she wouldn't have said that. She wouldn't have said, like, let's head for norskprøve, because she felt like, I'm just gonna give it a go. I just want to try. But I don't actually believe it either. That's pretty wacky motivation. It is motivation in terms of, I want to do it. But if you don't perceive the thing as possible for you, if you don't see the possibility for yourself to succeed, then it's very, let's say, volatile, right? You kind of want it, but then it feels like you can't have it again. And so it gets covered up by other priorities pretty quickly, right? So you actually really have to see the possibility for your success, so that you are able to pursue the goal, so that it's like the thing you actually want, the value you perceive with having learned it, so that it's more stable. It cannot work as motivation on its own. We often think that being motivated means that I want it, but really, on practical terms, that's why I love this definition by Jon Connelly so much. If you don't perceive a possibility for yourself to get there, you're not gonna get motivated, because it feels like wasted time, doesn't it? Like, okay, I want it. They're like, I want to win the lottery, right? But I'm not particularly motivated to buy any lots, because I don't think there is a real possibility for me to win. Do you know what I mean? And for so many people, learning Norwegian, learning to speak with confidence and with ease and at a professional level, for so many people, this feels like, playing the lottery. That I kind of buy a Norwegian course, and it's a bit like buying lots for the lottery, and like, some people win, yeah, but it feels very abstract. I don't actually feel the possibility. And that's when the motivation doesn't work. I'm really, really interested in your opinions. Put them down and tell me, is it your case maybe that A, you don't perceive the value of learning Norwegian as so high as the system would have you perceive it, right? Or did you have it like that in a certain phase of your life or of your career, and then it maybe changed due to some other circumstances? And B, do you feel that, okay, I want it, I perceive the value, but I don't perceive the possibility for myself? It doesn't feel real. I can't see myself getting there. And that's why I'm not motivated. Yeah, let me know. I would love to read your opinions on this. All right, a little recap on the motivation thing. The first thing I was talking about is the feeling of shame that people seem to have when they tell me, like, I don't feel the motivation, I can't get myself motivated. So to that, I'm saying, not feeling motivated is a sign of something, not a sin, right? It's not a bad thing necessarily. It's not a practical thing for your learning, of course. It would be practical to be motivated, but not being motivated is a sign of something rather than a flaw, because you cannot generate motivation out of thin air, right? Then we talked about the definition, the very useful definition of motivation by Jon Connelly, which is whenever you perceive something as good, valuable, practical, useful for yourself in the future or in the long run. And at the same time, whenever this something feels possible for you to achieve, this is key, then motivation will occur. So I want you to stick to this definition of motivation in your thoughts, rather than it's my responsibility to generate motivation. Yeah, motivation generates itself. It occurs when these two conditions are in place. And then I talked about the two components from the definition, that maybe you are not perceiving learning Norwegian, knowing Norwegian as that valuable for yourself at this point in time, which might be fair enough. It might be the most logical thing to not prioritize it. But then we should know about this and get rid of the feelings of shame, which are not going to help us ever. And then B, the second part we talked about, was that very many people do not perceive it as possible. They look at, in their feelings, they look at learning Norwegian and attending courses, buying a course, a bit like playing the lottery. Like, some lucky ones learn it, the most of us don't, right? They don't perceive it as possible. And that's because of that that true inner motivation again cannot occur because you kind of want it, but you don't perceive it as possible for yourself. So motivation is not going to show up for you on that point.